Part 1. You will hear a woman who works at an employment agency talking to a man about jobs he could apply for. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5. Now listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 5.
Good morning. Thanks for coming in to see us here at the agency, Joe. I'm one of the agency representatives and my name's Sally Baker.
Hi, Sally. I think we spoke on the phone, didn't we?
That's right, we did. So thank you for sending in your CV. We've had quite a careful look at it, and I think we have 2 jobs that might be suitable for you.
OK.
The first one is in a company based in North London. They're looking for an administrative assistant.
OK. What sort of company is it?
They're called Home Solutions, and they design and make furniture.
Oh, I don't know much about that, but it sounds interesting.
Yes, well, as I said, they want someone in their office, and looking at your past experience, it does look as if you fit quite a few of the requirements. So on your CV it appears you've done some data entry?
Yes.
So that's one skill they want. Then they expect the person they appoint to attend meetings and take notes there.
OK. I've done that before, yes.
And you need to be able to cope with general admin.
Filing and keeping records and so on. That should be OK. And in my last job, I also had to manage the diary.
Excellent. That's something they want here too. I'd suggest you add it to your CV. I don't think you mentioned that, did you?
No.
So, as far as the requirements go, they want good computer skills, of course, and they particularly mention spreadsheets.
That should be fine.
And interpersonal skills, which would be something they'd check with your references.
I think that should be OK, yes.
Then they mention that they want someone who is careful and takes care with details. Just looking at your CV, I'd say you're probably all right there.
I think so, yes. Do they want any special experience?
I think they wanted some experience of teleconferencing.
Oh, I've got 3 years' experience of that.
Let's see. Yes, good. In fact, they're only asking for at least 1 year, so that's great. So is that something that might interest you?
It is, yes. The only thing is, you said they were in North London, so it would be quite a long commute for me.
OK.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 6 to 10.
So the second position might suit you better as far as the location goes. That's for a warehouse assistant, and that's in South London.
Yes, that would be a lot closer.
And you've worked in a warehouse before, haven't you?
Yes.
So as far as the responsibilities for this position go, they want someone who could manage the stock, obviously, and also deliveries.
That should be OK. You've got to keep track of stuff, but I've always been quite good with numbers.
Good. That's their first requirement. And they want someone who's computer literate, which we know you are.
Sure.
Then they mention organisational skills. They want someone who's well organised.
Yes, I think I am.
And tidy?
Yes, they go together really, don't they?
Sure. Then the usual stuff. They want someone who can communicate well, both orally and in writing.
OK. And for the last warehouse job I had, one of the things I enjoyed most was being part of a team. I found that was really essential for the job.
Excellent. Yes, they do mention that they want someone who's used to that, yes. Now, when you were working in a warehouse last time, what sorts of items were you dealing with?
It was mostly bathroom and kitchen equipment, sinks and stoves and fridges.
So you're okay moving heavy things?
Sure, I'm quite strong and I've had the training.
Good. Now, as far as experience goes, they mention they want someone with a licence and that you have experience of driving in London, so you can cope with the traffic and so on.
Yes, no problem.
And you've got experience of warehouse work. And the final thing they mention is customer service. I think, looking at your CV, you're okay there.
Right. So, what about pay? Can you tell me a bit more about that, please?
That is the end of part 1. You now have 1 minute to check your answers to part 1. Part 2.
Come in, sit down. Good to see you.
Hello.
Now, this assignment, the best thing we can do, I think, is to think how we can approach it. The main point is to investigate television, but not what's happened in the past.
I was thinking that it would be necessary to go over the new media first and then...
Yes, that's a way to make a start, but you need to do that quite briefly.
But it's quite a complex topic.
I agree, but the emphasis must be on the future development of television as a cultural phenomenon.
Yes, I've been reading the talk by Ashley Highfield.
All right. And what do you take from that? What are the things that are competing with television?
Well, obviously the personal computer and the internet, but also the smartphone. And with the smartphone, there is the use of social media, which television does not deal with at all.
Good. Now, what's the problem with television in this new age?
Well, first, television does not deal with the social media in any way, obviously, and it has fixed schedules for viewing.
Although this is changing.
Yes, and of course, people just love their smartphones.
Of course. But is there any way in which television has the advantage over these other things?
Well, screen size is the obvious way. Television was made for the size of screen it has. Smartphones were not made to show action movies. Much more flexible schedules will be an improvement, but it seems that shopping and social contacts will stay with the smartphone.
Yes, I think you're right. You need always to look to the future and try to assess how things will develop. Good. Having said that, you need to move on to the newer social trends that we're seeing with television.
Is one of them the idea that programmes might become shorter and shorter?
Yes, the average programme might be 10 minutes or...
Yeah, or even less. Just mini programmes, say 4 to 5 minutes long. Now, do you think you can get access to all the materials you need?
The problem at the moment is the library.
Oh, yes. What's happening there?
There's a tremendous amount of noise because of the new extension they're building. It's quite impossible to work there.
They are stopping work for a week next week, I believe, and then all the sections will be open. There's a hold-up because some roof tiles have not arrived, so there will be peace for that week.
But then after that, the media studies section will be closed for a week, and all the noise and dirt will start up again.
Yes, but the sociology section will be open, and there's some good stuff there for you on this topic, and it's further away from the noise.
Yes, I don't think the sociology section is affected at all, and neither is the journal section.
No, obviously they're rotating the closures, and it was sociology's turn to close for a week last term.
I think we should make a complaint.
Yes, I think you should.
I've had a word with the library staff. They're very sympathetic, but...
They are affected by these works just as we are.
If I were you, I'd make a complaint directly to the Premises Committee. They only meet once a year, but in fact, I know they're having a meeting next Tuesday. You might like to make contact with them, but don't say I suggested this.
Yes, but the Students' Union might be better, since they are independent of the university.
That's true. But I can't imagine that people haven't already approached them about this. Let's try the Premises Committee.
Good idea. Why not?
OK.
Now, don't forget, I need a copy of your dissertations by email and 2 copies in print, that is, on paper. If you give the reprographics office 24 hours' notice, they'll make copies for you. And if you give them my details, they'll send those copies directly to me. They won't send copies to you, so you'll need to take your own copy personally from them. Good. Any questions?
One little thing was just that I wondered whether we should actually talk about the explosion of video material that is now being uploaded to the web, to YouTube and also the social media websites.
I was rather hoping you hadn't overlooked that. Good point. Video material provides competition for television programmes, especially shorter ones of the kind we were talking about. Amateur video production is a major challenge for television and for the internet itself. Anything else?
Yes, I've got a question, I'm afraid. I'm not completely clear about the exact meaning of culture as we're using it in this subject.
Well, Mrs. Jones is giving a lecture on culture and society in the University Theatre. It's on Wednesday at 10 a.m, and you can learn all about it there, I am sure.
Can you give us that again, please?
Yes, that's Culture and Society. It's in the University Theatre, and let me just check the time. Yes, here it is, 10 a.m. on Wednesday. She'll be giving a very thorough discussion of the issues in defining what culture means.
Right. That's good. The thing is, the reading this confused me a bit.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that occurred to me was that it might be broken down into subsections for future students.
Yes, that's a fair point. I'll bear that in mind. Now, don't forget, you need to do the reading and finish the assignment by the 4th of July. Is that okay?
Fine. Thank you very much.
That is the end of part 2. You now have 30 seconds to check your answers to part 2. Part 3.
Thousands of exotic plants and animals have been introduced into the British Isles over thousands of years. These newcomers compete with native species for resources and can also cause major changes in the wildlife and in the habitats of our countryside. The problem is not just British, of course, but global, and it has been going on for centuries. One good example of this I'd like to mention today is the European starling. The starling, to us in the UK, is a fairly ordinary little bird, about 8 inches long. In flight, it appears to be black or grey with tiny white spots. So it's a very ordinary-looking, almost dirty-looking bird. It nests in trees and buildings and can be found in the country and in towns. It travels in large flocks, leaving the nests in the morning and returning in the early evening. It feeds on insects and fruit. Its native range includes the British Isles and Finland, but it is also found in most of Europe and parts of Asia and Africa. In the British Isles and Finland, however, it has suffered a huge decline, and in these countries there is an effort to conserve the species. It is a different story in some of the places where it has been introduced. For example, The population in the USA is estimated at 170 million birds. Also, they are becoming a big problem in Australia and New Zealand. Starlings, as I have said, nest in trees, and it has been found that they are more aggressive than the native species when they are looking for nesting places. They therefore compete with native species for nests, and also they drive those species away from nests. So, this nest-building activity causes harm to native species, but also they are a nuisance to humans. They gather in large flocks of thousands of birds and feed together on commercial crops. This causes great financial damage to farmers, and they make a mess both in the town and the countryside. There is also the problem that starlings may carry diseases which affect both humans and other animals, although this has not been really confirmed, and we are waiting for more work to be done on this. The question arises, what are we to do about foreign species which not only do damage to native species, but interfere with human activity? We have 3 approaches in theory, but usually it is not a free choice between them. Usually, we have to do the best we can and that money will allow. The best approach, of course, is prevention. And many countries have passed legislation which attempts to limit or prevent the arrival of non-native species in their countries. In particular, there are many international regulations on how and where ships may pick up and deposit water, and this is a major contribution to preventing the accidental transport of fish and organisms by ship, since accidental transport by ship is a frequent cause of fish and other creatures going from place to place. Ports also have special areas where water can be deposited, and many of them have treatment facilities to kill any foreign species that may establish themselves in their waters. For fish and organisms that live in water, these international regulations are useful, but obviously not all species can be dealt with in this way. Sometimes it is simply too late for prevention. Then we have to consider eradication or management. By management, I mean that we have to decide how best to live with the new creatures and how to keep their numbers down. However, this becomes not only a scientific question. It can be a matter of choice what population level of an invasive species we want to maintain. This choice involves costs. There is the cost of living with the species, and there is the cost of managing the species over time. And species management is usually a long-term business without any foreseeable end. However, there is not just the economic aspect to this question. We can also consider the ethical point. How should we treat animals which we have sometimes deliberately introduced into the environment? Is it permissible just to exterminate a number of them convenient to ourselves? The most important decision has to be made in the political forum, no matter what considerations go into the making of that decision. These questions are relevant also to the approach of eradication, which is another option, but which does not have an encouraging history. Many attempts have been made to eradicate introduced species.
That is the end of part 3. You now have 30 seconds to check your answers to part 3.